Well, my next guest needs no proper introduction, but Nicholas Stone is the founder of Bluestone Lane. Now, before I have you actually introduce yourself, I sat next to you when you opened, I think, your second location. That was probably your second one in West Village.
Third.
The third one back in years ago when I was like broke living in New York. This was before the oat milk days. This was before any of these trends. But you really capitalized on like the Aussie breakfast. And I remember sitting next to you when you had opened this one, and there was not nearly as many locations as there is now in 2024. And I remember even just being young, broke me, thinking like, this is so cool and this is such good food. And now Bluestone is in multiple different cities, from LA to New York. I'm assuming you've now married your now wife since probably that location.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And it's a family-run business, which I actually didn't realize.
Yeah.
Which I think is like incredible, because in the way that Bluestone has expanded, you've been able to maintain not only the integrity of the company, but also like the quality. And I've seen a lot of companies fail in that when they expand. So I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Oh, so thank you. That's a lovely introduction. And as you said, I'm Nick Stone. I'm originally from Melbourne in Australia, moved to the US in 2010 to New York City, greatest city in the world. Bluestone Lane came about because I missed the coffee culture that I was familiar with back home. I had absolutely no prior hospitality experience, never worked a single day, let alone a single shift. It was really about this unfulfilled need that I had, that customer centricity that I missed. And we went about opening the first store in a subterranean basement in Midtown East in a Class B office tower with no street presence, no signage. We weren't allowed the A-frame at the front. It was really had to be driven through word of mouth, and this is in 2013. Instagram had kind of just started, but it was embryonic back then. And we opened around the corner from where I was working. I was in finance, working on Park Avenue in 270 Park Avenue, JP Morgan building, and went from there. And then and you were talking about West Village that opened, our first cafe that opened just short of 10 years ago in 2014. And one way you've described us is really kind, and it makes me feel like really satisfied, is we crave this notion of achieving boutique at scale. So having more locations, but making them sure that they feel still individual, but curated, but they have uniformity about the things that matter, the speed that we fulfill our food and beverages, the quality of the food and beverage product, just those quintessential components that have to be uniform, but then have those natural aesthetic details, and of course the personality of the team that fits with different unique communities and environments.
Forgot to mention as well, you guys, that Bluestone will have coffee at the upcoming The Fearless event, which is on April 27th. So if anyone is coming to that event and has not yet tried Bluestone, I assume most people living in New York have, but you will be able to get some in New York. You actually just mentioned, though, before we started, about some of those core values. What are some of those?
Oh, that's right. I mentioned one about ride the wave, and we have 4 core values. One is ride the wave, which really addresses the volatility, the ambiguity, the adversity you're going to encounter building a startup on the entrepreneurial journey, but just being part of a small business that's trying to achieve something that a lot of other companies haven't. You have to be prepared for the days where the surf's fantastic, to grow, monetize, to have really great service, to have that win, launch that product, and for it to be really successful, embrace it and celebrate it. Then you have a lot of days where the waves aren't good and it's cold and messy and it's blowing onshore.
Do you still have those days?
Of course we do. I have those hours. Like, actually, I've probably been working 5 hours today. I've had 2 shockers and 3 good hours. Yeah, it happens all the time. Like you just can't. We're in the human capital business. We're a human connection company, and humans aren't programmed to uniformly behave a certain way. They're not a machine. They've got feelings and personalities and drives and interests, and you've got to deal with that. And we're serving over 70,000 locals a week. So there's a lot opportunities to please and to make people feel special. But of course, like not everything goes perfectly. Bring your best is another value we have. And really that's asking for when you're working or when you're committed, like when you're actually on the clock, give it your best effort. Make sure that you don't waste your time, waste the business time. Just stay aligned and committed and focused. And after, when you're not working, do whatever you want. Like, hang out, play music, go to the gym, go partying, whatever you need to do. But like when you're with us, like be focused and bring your best. Third one is mateship, which is a very quintessential Australian New Zealand value, which was crafted through World War One when the Anzacs, Australian New Zealand Army Corps, were fighting under the British rule, actually. And the soldiers were actually almost cannon fodder. Gallipoli's a very famous battle that was in Turkey where the Aussie in New Zealand, the Anzacs landed, and they landed on the wrong cove, but they were there almost as a distraction, and they were slaughtered, but they survived and prospered. And mateship is this balance between friendship and respect. It's just and really being part of a team, leaning in, supporting each other, doing it where you're assuming good intent, you're aligned and congruent. And the last one's fair go. So fair go, another sort of very common value in Australian culture and society, which is acting with integrity, acting with honesty, and being fair to everybody that exists in your value chain. So that can be your fellow employees, which we call teammates, the suppliers, certainly your customers that we call locals. Being conscious of the role you play in the community, be conscious of your impact on the broader society, and of course on our environmental and social issues, and just being really fair to also investors and all of those stakeholders that have dedicated time and made commitments to give Bluestone the chance to prosper and reach its potential. So they're just four we have. We used to have PIC, which was passion, innovation, care, and consistency, and it just seemed a little bit generic. So we made them more Bluestone influenced. So that's what we have.
So you grew up in Australia. Did you always want to be an entrepreneur? Did you have that vibe? You have a brother who also is heavily involved in Bluestone.
I think it's a really interesting question. Like that, I wouldn't say I grew up thinking like I'm going to be an entrepreneur. No, I thought certainly I wanted to work overseas. Like I really craved the ability or the excitement of working overseas, whether it was in the US, the UK, or somewhere. I was very interested in working in Hong Kong and Singapore, and that's probably had a heavy influence on why I went down the finance track and studied that at undergrad and postgrad. And now I had 11 years in investment banking, corporate finance, which was the reason how I got to New York, which is I'm very fortunate for that opportunity. But both my parents were small business owners, so in many respects they were entrepreneurs themselves. So I guess they provided examples. They didn't come from big corporates, and they weren't sort of professionally university educated and became accountants or doctors or lawyers or what have you. And so I think that without a doubt had a subconscious impact. And then growing up, like my brother and I always worked. We always worked for pocket money, allowance, and we'd always have different ideas. And I think that came out, and they were little entrepreneurial endeavors. So whether it was collecting aluminium cans or aluminum cans through to chemistry around paper around working on some of my father's construction sites, we were always, just a friend of mine used to have this big expo, and we used to write addresses on envelopes and stamp them. So we always had that. So I guess, there was a point where I was always interested in small business and creative from that perspective. And even during banking, I had little things on the side I was always looking at. So I guess it was there. And then it started to accelerate when we finally launched Bluestone.
Do you remember feeling really inspired growing up with what your parents were doing? Or just kind of like that my parents didn't really care?
I think I didn't have enough respect for what they were doing at the time. It's not until you get a bit older and you realize like the juggle of bringing up kids and then trying to grow businesses. It's really hard, and they were both working for a lot of my childhood. And yeah, just dealing with the ambiguity, the challenge, the stress of being responsible for employing a lot of people and trying to build something and support a family. It's tough, but I admire their ambition, and I think I was certainly intrigued. My father had a chance to work overseas, and even though when he worked overseas, I really missed him and I was upset with him going away. Looking back at it, it was pretty. I think that certainly had an influence on, wow, like look at these opportunities outside of Australia. The world's big. This is fascinating. Different cultures, different environments, and I think that I've always found that quite elusive, and that without a doubt has played a part in motivating me to challenge and to reach different shores.
It's so funny for me because having now made most of my base in the UK and then coming back here, but then being there and realizing it really is the American dream. So many people who are not in America want to move to a different place, like somewhere overseas. Yeah. And I'm fascinated by that because for me being there, I'm like, I wanted to leave America and go somewhere else because I find there's so much culture there in UK and Europe in comparison, I guess, to America. So why were you so infatuated by not maintaining a life in Australia?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think Australia, one of the lifestyle capitals of the world, and Melbourne has been voted sort of regularly the most livable city in the world. So Australia is one of the most livable places in the world, and Melbourne is regularly voted the most livable city in the world. So it wasn't like I was escaping Australia because I didn't enjoy living there. Like I love living in Australia. I love being Australian. I'm very proud of it. And I look forward to the day that we all move back there. But Australians are nomadic, and the majority of the population are immigrants and recent immigrants. So whether that's from European descent and then you have this wave of migration around pre and post World War II from Italy, Greece, European, sort of Western European countries. And then you had mass migration in the 80s from Southeast Asia. And now you have huge migration, record levels of migration, primarily from India and China, other places in Southeast Asia. So I don't know, Australia's it's just part of our DNA that we grow up. And when you finish school, people want to go and travel the world and travel and have a year where they're working somewhere in the UK. Like if you're an Australian citizen, you get the right to work in the UK. You can get 2-year visa and you can work there. So they have a big break, and I wasn't afforded that because in my last year of high school, I got drafted to play professional Australian rules football, which I did for 6 years. So I was really stifled that opportunity. And a good way to travel and to attend schoolies and what have you. So I wasn't afforded that opportunity to travel. So I think it was just, I had an uncle that had worked overseas and was working in finance for an American bank. And I just thought there's just so much of the world to see. And I knew I was always going to come back to Australia, and I loved Australia, but it's just part of the culture. And I think you find that in a lot of Scandinavian countries, a lot of European countries. I'm not sure why it's not part of the US, maybe because the US is so big, but what percentage hold passports in the US? It's like less than 20%, isn't it?
And it's wild to me how many people actually there also have never come to America. And I'm like trying to convert everyone, like get a credit card, get the points, use it right so you can learn, travel and do all of that. But you were working, I'm assuming, at JP Morgan.
I was working actually at an Australian bank called ANZ, Australian New Zealand Banking Group. So we were based in JP Morgan building. So we shared that with a couple other banks at JP Morgan. And we were headquartered in Melbourne. So I was working in Melbourne, and we had a lot of ambitions to grow really aggressively in Asia. And part of that was having strong institutional presence in London and in New York. So I was afforded this opportunity to go across and try to build this business. I had fantastic mentors and managers who were supportive, and they were the ones that gave me the opportunity. I was doing my MBA. I had the chance to exchange to New York, and just before I started my exchange, I was told that I'd be given this chance to build a business to prove the business case, and I had 9 months, and so after I finished studying, it was the first time I've ever studied full time. So I went to university from 2000 through to 2009, So 9 years. I did undergrad, master's, and MBA.
All in business?
Part-time. All in business.
Yeah.
And it was a fascinating time because I was a full-time student in New York and I wasn't working. And
What school is this?
Pardon?
What school?
Yeah, so I went to Fordham Business School
yeah.
in Columbus Circle. So I was studying at Melbourne University, Melbourne Business School, and
Okay.
I actually got an exchange I was meant to go to Copenhagen Business School, but at that time, my girlfriend, now wife Alexandra, she was working in New York. She went ahead of me. I couldn't get a transfer because of the financial crisis. She was at university studying osteopathic medicine. She got signed by Ford Model Agency, got a 3-year contract and a visa. I said, you've got to go. I've got to find a way to get to you.
Oh.
And eventually found my way. And it was, when I told her, I was really quite broken. I was disillusioned when I was told, you're going to Copenhagen. I'm like, no, I've got to go to New York. And when I told her, she said, oh, great, let's go to Copenhagen. So that was a pretty clear signal that she was going to be pretty special and probably a partner for life. And so I ended up going to Fordham. I didn't even know about it. Like I just knew about NYU and Columbia, and Melbourne University had an exchange with NYU, but I missed out. I was a part-time student. They were taking full-time. Made sense. I was part-time, and I was very fortunate to get a lot of support from the bank for my MBA. So I ended up going to Fordham Business School, doing their executive management program, which was sensational, and lived full-time in New York as a full-time student, postgrad student for 5 months. And geez, that was a lot of fun. That was an amazing period.
New York back in that year too, 2012. So what year then?
That was 2010.
2010. Okay.
2010, New York City. I was huge into rock and roll music. A lot of my favorite bands had come out of New York City. You had, the National, the Strokes, the Yeah Yeahs, Interpol, and they were all from New York City. And that indie rock scene was just so big. So I was just able to see so much music, and I had friends in bands, and I was able to spend some time seeing them and travel them. I went to a lot of music festivals. Lollapalooza 3 times, and Gulf Ball. Bluestone did all the coffee for Gulf Ball for a number of years. That was a fantastic perk. That was a really good one because we'd get about 35 tickets, and we'd have half the staff working the stand and then the other half off during the festival. Then they'd swap. But because we did it for a number of years, we developed really great relationships with the management there. And I'd often be able to get close to the stage or on the side of the stage to watch unbelievable bands. I saw Tool, I saw who else? Let's see that. Kendrick Lamar, Kanye West, Guns N' Roses played there. It was phenomenal. It was just the Strokes. The Strokes hadn't played together for 5 years, and they reformed to play Gut Ball, and then that sort of kicked off their alliance again, which is fantastic. But absolutely loved it. We toured a lot of the US and during that time, and it was a dream. Yeah.
And then do you remember the exact moment you said, let me start this coffee shop? Who was your first phone call?
It was during business school. I was doing a class on venture capital, and you had to work on an idea, and I was going to do something similar to Groupon. Groupon had just gone public, and flash sites were all the rage. You might remember Living Social.
Of course. Rue La La, Guild Group.
Yeah.
I'm only 26 and I feel like I'm aging myself.
That's right. You were really young back then. But I was pretty intrigued. I actually ended up buying this Caribbean catamaran sailing trip on Groupon that was for 4 people or 6 people, had a private chef and a skipper. I remember getting it, and it was so cheap, and it's sailing starting in Cancun, and we got picked up from Isla Mujeres, and then we sailed through Playa del Carmen, and it was just unbelievable. I remember, and we got it. It was I think it was meant to be 10 grand. We got it for $2,000. And we split it up between 4 of us, and we were just blown away. I was like, oh, there's something here. It's not in Australia. I'm going to do something. And then started working on that a bit, and then realized, hey, actually, I had this moment where I was complaining so much about the coffee and the inconsistency of the quality and the service. The service was the thing that really rubbed me up the wrong way. I'd walk in and I'd go to the same place, but they'd never know my name. And it was just very impersonal. And that was the opposite of Australia. Australia is all about having locals, our customers, where we know your name, face, and order. And it's just so important. It's so competitive there because everyone makes great coffee and great food. So to differentiate with products, very challenging. Like you can get great coffee, like high-end specialty espresso everywhere. So it's really about walking in and saying, hey, Alexa, how are you? Do you want oat latte? Do you want to go on a stay? How's your day going? Like if you walk your dog or what are you doing this weekend? You go to London. But they know those personal salient points that they can, and they're very good small talk Aussies, like very good social beings, Australians, I think. Probably this little secret skill that we have out there. And that's why I think prosper pretty well overseas. But I couldn't get, someone told me, and said, I was always quite closed. I had a pretty closed, myopic view on Starbucks. I was like, oh, this is terrible. They failed in Australia, and Starbucks has just got no idea. How's it work? Can't believe. And then I started to look at like how fast it grown, how successful it was, how big its market cap was. At that point, I think its market cap was about 80 billion, 90 billion, and I was just floored. Couldn't believe it. And I thought there must be an opportunity to do something different here.
Fascinating. People use Starbucks also. I mean, it's everywhere. It's consistent. Starbucks, WeWork, and Equinox, and Sweetgreen at this point seem to be on every blog. Back in 2010, I mean, the coffee culture, right? I feel like social media and this glamorization behind entrepreneurship. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know what, in 2010, I think I was like 10. So I was certainly not sitting in a coffee shop drinking a latte. But the culture has shifted now where it has become so like the coffee shop and the vibe, and you want to go, people go on Yelp and they're going to these different coffee shops. So back in 2010, 2011, was there that kind of lifestyle of like people going to these coffee shops and almost like co-working from there? And it's this experience.
I think Starbucks really blazed the trail from that perspective. They wanted to have their cafes as the third space, but as they got more ubiquitous and they've reached this level of commercial saturation, they pivoted their model more to fulfillment and product execution. They added drive-throughs in the majority of their locations. I just think they realized that they couldn't execute the service proposition that they wanted at the start. They just had to evolve. It was really a function of being so successful. But the one thing Starbucks always lacked is really a food program. Like all the food is made in a central commissary in the Midwest, and it's frozen and sent to the store. Like nothing you're eating at Starbucks is fresh. It's all in plastic. Like why would it be in plastic? It's in plastic because it's in modified atmospheric packaging that has nitrogen in it, so it doesn't expire and go off, which is obviously very common for snack foods. But the opportunity that Bluestone had was to not only provide great coffee, but great food and this great service, like personalization and having real deep roots in community. And I think Bluestone was a huge influence on that whole movement that began around 2020 for us, 2013, but 10, 11, 12 years ago. And that the Aussies had a big impact in some of these coastal cities, New York, LA, San Francisco. A lot of great specialty espresso places had amazing coffee, and they might have great service. I don't think that was a hallmark. I think it was, again, leading with great coffee, but very few had any semblance of a food program. So, we were focused on those three critical elements: coffee, food, and service. And of course, creating environments and atmospheres where you feel comfortable and you feel like you can work and socialize. And it's not cookie cutter, they look different. So Bluestone Lane has 59 locations, but the Venice store felt Lockyer. Looks nothing like our store on Upper East Side. Looks nothing like our store in the Woodlands, Texas. Looks nothing like the store we have in 30 Hudson Yards, a 1.4 million square foot Class A new office tower. So having that flexibility to adapt the brand, to shape to the community, to shape it to the space we're in, keeping it fresh, from that perspective, which is that boutique and scale feel, but then still you want the coffee to taste the same, whether it's New York and LA, DC, Texas, Boston, what have you.
So who was that first call though? When it came to you're having a group en route, you get on this boat trip. Yeah. You're how old at this time?
So I moved to New York when I was 28.
Okay.
So I would have been 28 or 29.
And you're working, which is how I'm assuming you're affording to live in New York.
Well, at the start, I was in 2010, for the first sort of 5 months, I was very fortunate. I was just studying full time. We were in a tiny, probably it would be lucky to be 400 square feet, maybe 350 square feet, one bedroom in West Village on the top of the stoop on Barrow Street, 52 Barrow Street, near Bleecker, paying an exorbitant rent per square foot. And it didn't really matter. Like, everything was about for our case, we wanted to be in West Village. We wanted to be near the water. We wanted to be near the restaurants. We wanted tree-lined streets, and we wanted to avoid like huge avenues. And yeah, so I was studying full time, but I knew that I was starting work on February 1st, 2011. And I had that security of knowing like I was going back to work to the same bank. I knew what I was going to be compensated. But I'd worked nonstop since 17, so I got drafted to play Australian Rules Football AFL, as I said earlier, when I was just about to turn 18. So I played 6 years there, and then I went straight from AFL into an internship in banking, and then went straight into grad position in banking and corporate finance, and then worked the whole time.
Oh, fascinating. So, I mean, opening a restaurant, coffee shop, whatever at this point you want to call it, is incredibly expensive, especially in New York. So was there VC money? Did you raise when you decided, I mean, you're going to...
First time we opened, we raised $350,000.
From friends and family?
From 4 friends and myself.
Okay.
Yeah, so I put the majority, a significant amount of my savings into opening the first store. And it was 4 friends put in 50,000 and I put in 150.
And were you freaked out? Like 150, that's a lot. I mean, if you've been working since 17, I'm assuming you've got like a little bit more than that in savings. That's a massive amount of money.
Yeah, it was like, I didn't want to lose the money, that's for sure. But, I guess I always had the confidence that I could, I never thought we were going to lose money. I just thought, I was never worried about my own money. I was really concerned. I didn't want to lose my friends, 50,000 each. But it was really the guy I sat next to. It was my boss in Australia, my old boss in Australia, and then another couple of mates who lived in New York. And I just, I just had the confidence that we could execute. And I that's the thing about me is if I do enough research on something, I either get really convinced it's going to work, or I get that visceral reaction. I'm like, no, it's too much risk. It's just asymmetric and stuff. Yeah, I don't think it's worth that, or it's too risky for me, or I'm just not comfortable with my value set or probability of success. So with this, I was like, this is going to work. Absolutely. Like, I know this is going to work if we control the costs here. We remain really disciplined. It worked. So that first 350 funded 2 stores.
Was it a gut intuition? Is that how you would kind of classify feeling?
It's both. Like, I think my gut would be most of the time directionally accurate. Like, it really, really is. And I think most time when I'm sort of told to reconsider, even though it doesn't feel good with me, the decision's the wrong one. But by nature, I'm a very analytical person. So I really like data to validate, and I like trends, and I like correlations, and I'm not this math wizard, but I guess I used to see these insights as an analyst in banking, and then I think I overlay it with a probability metric that you get from being part of teams, and you learn about psychology and the buyer behavior and just congruency of teams, and like, can this actually be executed? Like, what's the pragmatic, like the pragmatic approach and the practicality of this actually coming about? And there's a great saying that no one owns a good idea, execution's everything. And I think that's right. Like, everyone's got the idea of doing a coffee shop, everyone's got the idea of doing a podcast, or building a new social media site, or building a new luggage company or makeup company or what have you, but execution is everything. And execution really is about like getting a team and having a network, or knowing the suppliers or the value chain that can work and align with your values, what you want to achieve. And a lot of it is storytelling, selling the dream, getting everyone excited on board, but then fulfilling your role as the founder and entrepreneur, that you are someone that can be trusted, that's worth backing, that's going to act with integrity and the right values. And So that's the thing in decision making. Like you have to have all that aligned. So even if the data's saying, yeah, it's like, can it actually be pulled off? Do I have the people that are aligned and can, you know, commit the requisite amount of effort and are going to make the sacrifices and the dedication, or have the skill or just the tenacity, or the, you know, and if you do, then I think, you know, probably it's going to work out okay. But yeah, it's hard just to isolate it, but everything needs to be based on algorithm, especially if you are dealing with people, which, that are not an easily quantified thing.
You know, I've really realized the more successful I've become, that like even my business, the personal brand, entrepreneurship, just even general discussion about it, because I spend so much time talking to people. It's a business of people, like just business in general, sales, CPG, food, it's all people, and people can be very finicky. People change their mind. I'm assuming you've had so many people be like, I don't like this coffee, or the oat milk tastes different today than it does, you know, yesterday, because you can't ever know what somebody's thinking. And it's kind of always a hard space to be in. But if you're very confident, and that's why I'm always fascinated when I talk to entrepreneurs about that intuition and that gut instinct, is I really do think that's what sets certain people apart. I mean, you have to live and breathe what you're doing, right? You put 150K in and you said you're more concerned about losing their money, because if you had lost your money and say Bluestone did fail, there's always a possibility a company won't work, right? What would do you remember at any point thinking, like, if Bluestone bombs?
Well, I've still got that thought now.
Yeah.
You know, like,
but you've got that's not impossible.
No, of course it is. Like, you know, anything can fail. It's, you have to keep innovating and you have to keep on your game, like bring your best. Like one of the 4 ways we have, like consumer hospitality is so easy to go from an in-trend brand to someone that's on the outer. It's really, really easy. Like stores can tank. We can have a store that can tank in 1 month, and then it would take us a whole year to bring it back. So if you think about coffee in particular, that's focused on localized relationships. It's really not about an acquisition business, it's about retention business, serving the same person every day or hopefully twice a day, especially if you're in a captive area. So if you're in the office building, or if you're in a residential community where it's not very transient, there's a lot of tourists, like you focus on those who live there. You need to be the best, and you need to have a general manager or a team that act like the mayor of the community, that know the running group, that know the schools, that know the daycare, know the kindergartens, know the tennis club, know the gyms, what have you. You need to be out there doing that local area marketing. And all you need to do is, people remember experience. They don't remember the product. Like you come in and we make a mistake with your order, but we deliver it with a smile and make you feel special, make you feel like you are, you know, a rock star, and you've got that recognition. You'll come back tomorrow. But if we're rude to you, if we've made the best coffee and we're rude and impersonal, no eye contact, we can't remember your name, and it's just sloppy and slow and inattentive, you're probably going to go tell people, hey, Bluestone's lost its way. It's got too big. It's scaled now. And it's not like it was when it opened in West Village in 2014 when you first went there. So that's the constant challenge, especially if you want to be in the service-led, hospitality-led, you want to be a human connection company, which we do, and you want to be in the premium space. It's a lot easier if you're just shoveling food out of a drive-through and it's fast food. I don't expect any service if I went to, I mean, like this is me personally, but if I go to McDonald's, like my expectation on service is that it will just be accurate and it will be quick. I don't expect them to know anything about me. I don't expect them to even look at me. I don't expect anything other than a bag come through the window and drop in the car, you know. But Bluestone Lane, that's not the perception of us. The perception of us is that it's got this great atmosphere vibe, that you feel like a local, that you're treated a bit, that you're special, and it's, that personalised nature is really important. And that is the Australian coffee culture. That is what you expect at all Aussie cafes. And that's what you expect at Aussie hospitality. And that's very, very hard to achieve. But I think it's just so critical to the fabric of society. And I think it's so undervalued. You know, think about, we've got this absolute crisis in mental health where we have disintermediated human connection with digital connectivity. So we're spending less time with other people, less time with our friends, less time with our family. More people are single. and we're living on our phones and digital devices that are creating these connectivity, engagements that are not real relationships. We don't know, like, people act differently. It's the positive bias, and these places like Bluestone are trying to bring people together to, like, you've got to, it's the old analogy, like, if you're feeling down, like, what's the most common piece of advice if someone's feeling low? What would it be? If someone said, "Hey, Alexa, you seem like you're really down, you're depressed," what would someone say?
Go for a walk, have some chocolate, do you want some ice cream? Call your friend.
Exactly. So it'd be like, catch up with a friend,
Yeah.
right? And like, calling your friend versus seeing a friend in person is a big difference. Yeah. It's not text your friend. Not text your friend. Do you know what, like, think about those moments when you're feeling like lost or excited. Like, the best part about life is like celebrating those success with someone.
Yeah. Or
when you're really down, like, just having the chance to feel a hug or embrace, or when someone says, "You know what, this is gonna be okay. Like, this is a tough day, but you're gonna be okay, and I'm here to support you." So for Bluestone Lane seeks to provide that. It seeks to be that daily ritual when you walk in. Someone makes you feel like you're part of our community. And that's what a privilege it is, because serving coffee, we could be the first human that you see. You wake up in the morning, I'm going to walk the dog, I'm going to get a coffee. Like, what a privilege it is for someone to walk in and the first human you see that day is one of the Bluestone Lane teams. So I spend so much of my time with our teammates, storytelling and encouraging them and trying to paint the reality of, like, what we do is really special. I wish society valued it more. It seems that certainly in the capital markets, or like from a finance perspective, that the most valued is just food that is the least healthy for you, but the cheapest to produce and the easiest to produce. So frying things, you can't get that really wrong, and just shoveling out through drive-throughs where, Wall Street and investors value the most. But societally, like, how can that be the most valuable when you've got the amount of issues with obesity and comorbidities, and which is primarily driven through lifestyle choices, either poor eating, lack of education, lack of exercise. So certainly from my perspective, I hope there's a bit more recognition of a lot of these small businesses and restaurants and cafes that really emphasize to make people feel good and produce products that are good for them, that aren't contributing to health-related illness, which I believe is also the number one cause of bankruptcy, which is health-related bankruptcy, either through insurance or through prescriptions they can't afford or surgeries they can't afford, which is so incredibly sad, and particularly from Australia, where we're very, very fortunate to have a strong public health system.
No, it's fascinating. Moral of the story is, I mean, everything is insane. Like, everything is so expensive. I can't even imagine the cost of a cup of coffee back in 2010, 2011 in comparison to now. I mean, what some of these places charge, and I'm actually curious about what your thoughts are on tipping culture. But one company actually in particular I've seen scale very poorly is Mamad, which is one of my favorite coffee shops in New York. And they used to be amazing. And I got to say, like, Bluestone, there's similarities between both. I mean, I think they're more like French and whatnot. And they haven't opened nearly as many. I think they went Connecticut now, Upper East Side, and some more in New York. And to me, the quality sucks. The people there are not happy to be working there in the way that I remember when I first sat and had a latte there years ago. And it's pretty remarkable how Bluestone has managed to do the opposite and scale properly, which I would assume has to do with the founder.
Well, I think it's very kind. I don't think it's exclusively because of the founder, that's for sure. I don't know what's, I know Milan pretty well, and I know the founder there, and I know a number of the team. I'm sure they're probably working it out, iterating. But it comes back to the point that you're only as good as your last experience, right? And you need to be on all the time, and it's a hard bar. It's a really hard bar when you have such high expectations, and the expectation of Bluestone is that we must nail coffee, food, and service. And if we don't, then you're going to be you're going to be disappointed, and you might actually sort of start communicating to your friends that, hey, like it's lost its way, and word of mouth is the most important thing in hospitality.
I want to ask you, what does the founder of Bluestone Lane think about tipping culture? Tell me, really.
It's a part of the US DNA. It's not something that I guess inherited, but I think it is really, really important that you reward great service with a great gratuity. I don't necessarily believe you need to tip well at all when the service isn't there, or where the food or the beverage doesn't taste great. So I do think it's getting out of control, though, that you get asked for tips all the time. I think hospitality, where people are spending a lot of time on their feet, trying to make sure everyone has a great time. There's a lot of fixed costs in the atmospheres and environments you're going to. I think that definitely needs to be rewarded. But me being asked at a pharmacy or a gas station or a supermarket to tip seems a little bit of a overreach.
Finally, some good actual feedback from somebody in the space who can say it properly. I know we're about to hit an hour. So what is one last piece of advice you would give to let's say you're a guy, right, in your 20s, you can't really figure out what you want to do for a career. You're dabbling in things. You maybe think you want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What's your advice for that person?
I think let me start by saying that I think you've just got to keep active. You got to keep busy. So if you are not sure where you want to be or the path you're meant to be on, just do something. Just have a bias towards action and talk to people. Go and socialize, become inquisitive about different industries or different businesses. And I think the more you're educated, the more you educate yourself, the more you see a pathway and you learn. So I think the worst thing to do is just to remain stagnant and to not go out there and chasing something. But I think being educated, talking to people, socializing, will give you those sort of insights of maybe this is something I can go after. But I don't know too many entrepreneurs that sit around and just hope. They go out and they make it happen. And I think they get creativity through spending time with people and reading.
Nick, you have been a true pleasure. I'm so inspired, and thank you so much to everyone who is listening. Bluestone will have coffee and whatnot on April 27th. So I am so inspired by your story. It is a true entrepreneur success story to have sat next to you in what I guess was the third location years ago and now see the growth. So congratulations, and thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thanks so much, Alexa.